Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We will get started in just a couple of minutes. We'll give it maybe one more minute and then we will get started. Okay, so we will get started. Welcome, good evening, everyone. Welcome to What Did I Do with My Degree? My name is James Warren. I am the Student Life Coordinator here for CUNY SPH. I'm fairly new, very, very new. I'm within maybe 3 to 4 weeks. So I'm happy to be here and have this conversation and moderate this panel for you all. So tonight we will hear from public health professionals and CUNY School of Public Health alumni who hold a degree in public health nutrition. And before we begin with the panel, I just want to give context to this degree program. And I'm going to just be reading that. And I will just say, and I quote, Master of Public Health and Public Health Nutrition prepares students to promote the nutritional well-being of population groups. Students learn to assess the nutritional needs of various populations, to plan and implement nutrition and food programs, and to manage nutritional programs in community and institutional settings. And so if you want to know more information about that, please feel free to go to the CUNY School of Public Health website and you'll find more about this particular program. And so tonight's panel will include moderator questions, of course, followed by audience question and answers. As a reminder, you are able to move between the breakout sessions, so feel free to do that anytime. Also, the chat is open for comments and questions that you may have. And so without further ado, we will hear from our panelists. So I will ask our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves briefly. And I would just pretty much say, I'll say Madison, you go, and then Haley, then Lily, and then Gabrielle, and then we'll get right into our conversation.
Okay, thank you, James. Hi, everyone. My name is Madison. I just recently graduated from CUNY this past fall in the MPH nutrition program. I'm currently a premier patient navigator at the Health Center at Hudson Yards, which is a health concierge practice with Mount Sinai Health System. My role is to navigate patients' healthcare journeys while working directly with healthcare professionals. And it's also my responsibility to identify opportunities and ways to improve healthcare experiences for patients and advocating for patients.
Welcome, Madison.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me here. I'm glad to be here. My name is Haley Davis. My pronouns are she and her. I graduated with my MPH in Public Health Nutrition in 2021. Currently, I am the Director of Development for a private consulting firm based in New York. And in that role, I support various nonprofits and a few small for-profit companies with grant writing, strategic planning, and capacity building projects. The firm I work for primarily supports organizations that do youth development work, but we have done some public health projects. And in my role specifically, I have flexibility to find more public health projects. So thank you.
Welcome, Haley.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lily Leung, and I graduated in 2015, so it's been a while. And I did both my didactic program in dietetics at Hunter and also concurrently with my MPH program. I'm also a registered dietitian, and I've done a lot of internships around New York City. I also worked at Compass Group after I graduated and was the director of Specialized Wellness Solutions, which is just fancy talk for a lot of strategic projects related to food service. They're the largest food service company in the country. They employ somewhere upwards of, I think, 250,000 people. It's kind of insane. And during COVID, I moved out to LA and started a family, and most recently started a new job at Lakeshore Learning Materials, which does education products. So they build toys and furniture. And it's been a really big transition in the last few months, but one that I'm very happy about.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gabrielle Solis. I was a master's of public health nutrition graduate in 2017. In my current role, I'm a senior program manager in the Safety Net Innovation Lab at Code for America. Code for America is a nonprofit civic technology organization, and we work shoulder to shoulder with CBOs and governments to help them build digital tools and services to improve programs. Particularly for the Safety Net Innovation Lab, we work with state governments to help them reimagine and rebuild the delivery of equitable and accessible safety net benefits. When I say safety net benefits, the programs that we specifically work on are SNAP, Medicaid, WIC, and TANF. But we really meet states where they are, and it's dependent on the state and the client's needs. So in my role, I serve as the program lead for the state of Colorado. So I hold our partnership responsibilities, and I lead a multidisciplinary team through our policy, operational, and delivery challenges. So really being that advocate for our state partners, but also knowing how to coordinate across our multidisciplinary team, which includes like product managers, qualitative researchers, data scientists, and things like that. And yeah, that's it for me.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Gabrielle. So we're just going to get right in because I have some questions to begin. So let's start with Haley. So you, from what I've read, have extensive experience in nonprofit space. And so you even mentioned working full-time nonprofits while attending CUNY. My question to you is, how were you able to manage your work and education, and how did that intersect for you, if it did? And did you ever consider working in a different sector? I know that's loaded.
Sure, no problem. So yeah, I have been working, I was working directly in the nonprofit space for about 8 years almost at this point. So when I started my degree, I was working full-time for an organization focused on healthy food access. It was very relevant to my degree, and there was a ton of overlap. I switched jobs in the middle of my time at CUNY SPH, but I found there was still some overlap. And the pandemic actually started when I was in school. So at that time, the curriculum was very relevant to everything I was doing, and even led into, a lot of the public health research we talked about in class led into a lot of the grants I was writing for my job. So the way I managed all of the, school and full-time work was really just getting honing my time management skills. And the first job that I had in the food world, the office was on the Upper West Side. So I would just go to work 9 to 5, and then I would ride the train a couple more stops up to Harlem and then sit in class and then take the hour train back to Brooklyn home, and get homework done on the weekends. But yeah, I mean, so right now as a consultant, I'm not working directly for a nonprofit, but I'm still supporting nonprofits. And basically it's I would say similar sector. There's still overlap and relevancy to public health. I'll be honest, I'm happy to have transitioned from nonprofit directly to consulting. Honestly, I'm able to be paid a lot more fairly. My work portfolio is a lot less stressful. I have a better work-life balance, but I'm still able to have the impact I want to have in the community. It's just a little more indirect. So I'm happy in this sector, but I will say I still feel like I have lots of flexibility with how I want to apply my degree. Like I feel like I have many options of things I can do still, if I choose to move on from consulting eventually, which I probably will.
All right, thank you. Flexibility is important. Moving on to Lily. Question to you is, how did your experience as an intern at the nonprofit God's Love We Deliver, in addition to your time at CUNY, how did that shape your career path to being a registered dietitian?
So I took a lot of intern work. Those are just the ones that are written down. I think
Okay.
working and struggling around New York City, you just kind of have to get your boots on the ground and take whatever comes at you. But what I did realize working at so many different companies and interacting with all these internships and people there is that I really love time box work. So something with a start date and an end date. I took a lot of temporary assignments while I was getting my MPH. So I, did part of my dietetic internship at God's Love, but I also worked at Health First for a few months. I worked at the New York State Department of Health for a few months. And when it was really time to go from temp to hire, I found myself struggling to push the button and push the trigger and say, I'm going to commit. It really wasn't until I found my job at Compass Group working on strategic projects that I really found my stride. I had projects anywhere that lasted from 3 months to a little over a year, and just felt really good to put something down and pick up something new. And even now I'm 2 months into my new role at Lakeshore Learning. And I've just learned so much about the public education system, which is new to me, and how funding works. So it really directly impacts how, the sales team forms proposals, how marketing puts together campaigns. I'm learning, really how RFPs are really just private grants, and, dissecting research articles that helped me during my journey at, CUNY is something I work on now. And it really is the best company I've worked for so far, because Lakeshore has a very grassroots background. They actually support working parents, which is unheard of. My daughter goes to the on-site preschool here. So yes, it's phenomenal, and it's highly subsidized. So they just, take the payment out of my paycheck, but I'm able to go downstairs and have lunch with her when I can. So it's open to anyone that works here, from your child 6 weeks old till 5 years old. And, as a working parent, that benefit is like invaluable. And there's also a lot of overlap between Lakeshore and the nonprofit world too. For instance, we just announced a new CEO, Charles Best, who was the previous CEO of Donors Choose, one of the largest nonprofits in New York City. He's actually moving to LA. So they really do walk the walk, talk the talk, and that work-life balance that, Haley mentioned as you progress in your career is invaluable.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And very important, work-life balance. No one ever knows exactly what that looks like, but we pretty much know how it feels. And when people allow you to do that, that's great. Thank you so much, Lily. So Gabrielle, to you. Before your current role at Code of America, you worked for the New York City Department of Health. What other positions have you held, and what impact did an MPH degree have on your career trajectory?
Yeah, so I've held quite a few roles before my current position. My undergrad was in dietetics, and I started my career as a clinical dietary assistant. Um, and there I realized that I didn't that like the clinical setting wasn't my passion. The direct one-on-one nutrition education, that's not wasn't what I was interested in. What I really wanted to know was like the kind of like the reason behind some of the underlying reasons that some people became sick, and I wasn't really getting that in clinical nutrition. So my MPH degree really provided me with a more in-depth understanding of the systems and socioeconomic factors that might affect health and create inequities. And what kind of preventative strategies can be employed to really improve health outcomes for marginalized Americans. And so when I was in school, I started as an intern at the Department of Health in the Center for Health Equity. And so that was very connected with what I was learning in school. And I think was just like a huge supporter of like what I was learning and how to really connect it into community work. And kind of jumped around to a couple of different roles within city government. So for a little bit, I worked for the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation on their Shape Up NYC program. So free community fitness opportunities. And then I moved back into the health department for the chronic disease prevention unit, where I was working on some healthy food access programs. Specifically ones that were working with for people who are enrolled in SNAP to provide them with additional money to spend on fresh fruits and vegetables. In that from that experience, I think that's where I really understood, even additional barriers just to accessing public benefits, and knowing that SNAP can really improve health outcomes for so many, and that there's so many barriers for people to actually access them. That's really kind of what ended up bringing me into my current role. And another thing about kind of working in the public sector that has really supported the work that I'm doing now is that I had direct access to community-based organizations and the participants of the programs that I was working on. And then in addition to that, federal agencies and other government contractors. So I really had like a great understanding of the direct community impact, and then also like from a federal perspective. And that's really kind of supported my the work that I'm doing now, because I'm working with state agencies, and I have working with multidisciplinary teams that maybe don't have that experience. And so I've been really able to leverage the work in the public health sector and what I'm doing now. And definitely don't think that I would be where I am where I am today without the knowledge that I've acquired from the CUNY School of Public Health.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Last but not least, let's get to Madison. So Madison, can you talk to us about your field work and capstone projects at CUNY SPH, and what impact did both of these experiences have on your career path as a public health professional?
Yeah, absolutely. So for my fieldwork, I had the opportunity to work with the New York Vaccine Literacy Campaign with CUNY SPH. My primary role here was to conduct community partner outreach and develop vaccine education resources. I also had the opportunity to develop nutrition and COVID-related educational publications, and actually collaborate with community-based nutrition food programs. So following this, I decided to focus on food insecurity and racial disparities for my capstone project, where I conducted a secondary analysis of NHANES data to analyze the relationship between race and food security status. So food security was definitely a concern during the pandemic, as food insecurity rates had spiked drastically. So both my fieldwork and capstone project allowed me to witness firsthand the health disparities that exist in our society. And I really think this is what strengthened my passion for pursuing a career in public health nutrition. And both these experiences allowed me to improve my ability to advocate for patients, especially those in vulnerable populations, and have given me the tools to thrive in my current role working in such a large health system.
Well, thank you all for answering those questions and sharing part of your journey with this degree. So we're going to now open this up for any of our participants to ask questions. But before we open it up to everyone, we have compiled a list of questions that when people registered for this event, they put in questions that they wanted to make sure that were answered. So I see, so I see your question. Actually, we'll start with that. In the comments, we have the question. I also want to know if there are many sectors after public health, why public health nutrition, and what are the merits and demerits? And anyone can just take a stab at that.
I can start. I wanted to also second what Gabrielle was saying earlier too about how when you think of nutrition, you think hospital, right? You're going to be working in a hospital, educating patients, you're going to be working with doctors. There's so many avenues to nutrition. There's community health, there is food service, there's clinical work. And I was kind of on the same boat. I really didn't want to do the clinical path and just be doing one-on-one consulting with the patient, inpatient for the most part, who probably had a really awful experience there and just wants to go home. That's the last place they really want to learn about how to eat better. And anyone who really wants to learn to eat better, you can just Google it, right? So it really was looking at really disease state, the cause of it, the socioeconomic barriers that make health equity, inaccessible to so many. And that's kind of what public health nutrition encompasses. I think when you specialize in something like this, you're really able to see the epidemiology of it. As far as demerits go, you can take the courses within the program and you can segment out however you want. It's not as if you only need to take public health nutrition classes. You can take them in other disciplines too. So it really is as segmented or as specialized as you want it to be. Does that answer the question, Sushil?
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
And then also, Lily, thank you to also bring that up, because you're right. When people think of nutrition, they just think about, let me meet with someone, a dietitian or anything like that. But when you're really talking about the inequities, you're talking about the means to eat healthy and to be nutritious, there's so many aspects and layers and barriers to that. And so thank you for bringing and shedding light to that, because I think that's very important. Not too many people think about that being something that they could actually study and work on and deal with. If that makes sense. Okay, so if you have any other questions, feel free to write it in the chat, and then we will proceed from them. But let me just start and fire away with some of the questions that we already have. And I will start off with, what would you say has been the key to your professional growth?
I can start off with that one. So I would say one thing is that just being curious, just taking every opportunity that's kind of presented as like a kind of a volunteer opportunity in like even the workspace. Sometimes works will ask for volunteers to participate in some sort of offshoot of that is not a required job activity, but just having that curiosity to like learn more, because you never know what's going to come out of it. Also just like identify, like once you're kind of like in a role that you get that role, just trying to identify like what the exact skills that you're excelling in and what you're not and what you want to work on, and being proactive about developing those further. If I really hate public speaking and that was something that like a long time ago I really wanted to focus on getting better at, and so just trying to self-identify areas that you want to improve in, and also asking for feedback from other people around you is super valuable, because there might be something that you were not aware that you're doing or saying, or the way that you phrase things, and that is always super valuable. So just being open to receiving feedback. It's not always the easiest thing to do, but just like, so in short, just looking for opportunities for growth and advancement, and being super proactive about where you want to go.
Anybody else want to take a stab at it?
I was going to say the same thing. Just take advantage of every opportunity, everything, and network, and just go to events, even like in the community, attend webinars, just do everything you can.
Another question. Now, this is always important. Do you believe that you have a good return on investment or return of investment for your degree, of your degree?
I can start and answer that. I personally, absolutely. I have my bachelor's in public health. And, I had already been taking advantage of every opportunity that came my way for years and years, and very intentionally working my way into the public health and nutrition space. But getting my master's in public health a couple of years after I got my bachelor's, and after I had entered the workforce, it helped me go from a job where I was underpaid to a job that was a lot more appropriately compensating me. And it's still, relevant enough to the field. And again, I feel like I have room to, a lot of flexibility to make that role what I want and expand the types of projects I work on, and room to go elsewhere in the public health fields. But absolutely, the return on investment, without that degree, I don't know if I would have gotten the job I have now, or the compensation that I have now, which I feel is much more fair than what I was getting before. In the networking I've done, the connections I've made were invaluable.
I agree too, especially if you're looking at the New York City area compared to Columbia and NYU, who also have very strong public health and nutrition programs. This was definitely a great investment if you are looking at programs in that area.
What would you say, or what were your first steps or priorities after graduating?
I could take this one. So similar to what I've heard prior to getting my MPH, I actually worked as a medical assistant. And I also realized that the clinical side of things wasn't what I was passionate about. And I believe that working in a profession that you're passionate about is the biggest drivers for success. So I think the first steps was really networking, figuring out what career path that I wanted to take. And I think that the best advice that I had gotten during grad school was that the learning never stops, and that the MPH is not the end goal. So just really networking, and just like Gabrielle said, just always taking on new tasks and experiences and opportunities that come your way.
Anyone else want to take a stab at it? I know that you all were mentioning one of the common things I was hearing from you all, really talking about experience learning, embracing experience and learning on the job and within your experience, which leads to maybe finding your passion. You talked a lot about passion, and Madison, you just mentioned something about, finding a passion. How important is passion with this work, or how how strong was passion? What role did passion play in you landing where you are now?
I can take that one. I would say that passion definitely needs to be a big part of doing this work. One, because you're dealing with like the well-being of like real people, and being passionate about improving their lives and the whole, like, doing your work well is super important. But on top of that, like, I think that it's not every job is super high paying in public health. So you really need to be passionate about what you do to do good work, and find the thing that will compensate you even more. But you have to let passion drive you to find what you're interested in and to serve the public well, because if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to be motivated to put in your best work, and that in turn will affect real people and in their real life needs.
Thank you.
I'll also add that I think that everyone that I've worked with in the public sector is like so passionate about what they do, and I feel super fortunate that to have always worked with people that are just motivated and passionate about working in this field.
I agree 100%. I didn't use it in my bio for this panel, but on LinkedIn, my bio, the first thing it says about me is passionate professional. Passion is what has driven me all the time. I was on a podcast once speaking about some of the food policy and public health work I've done, and the description was like the most passionate human. Like for me, that's what drove me. And I would also add purpose is another thing that feels similar and relevant. Yeah, just having a reason to be in this space, because there's so much opportunity to do so much with a public health degree and in public health work. So I think passion is the biggest driver. And if that's your purpose, then you're good to go.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a question in the chat. What were the challenges you faced as you started your career? And then what advice can you give to public health nutrition students starting out?
I mean, I can talk about really trying to establish yourself, and as far as balancing living in a very expensive city while possibly trying to pay back loans and trying to land that job that will pay you a living wage is tough. And I wouldn't have gone by without networking really even before I graduated the program, right? The moment you're in it, I looked at different events like this that you can attend either virtually or in person. I looked at local, grassroots organizations. There's New York City Dietetic Associations, there's Nutrition Network. Really, a lot of the jobs and the prospects that you're going to get come from there, because right now, if you're, let's say, applying to jobs online, you're up against thousands of people, and there's ATS software that just filters everything out. So really, to get your foot in the door, I would say anywhere where you can say yes and network, great. And also after you've started your job as well, I think it's important to even network with your coworkers, right? To understand that you're not going to stay at this job for 10 years, right? That's kind of unheard of now. But you want to maintain those really good relationships, because the people that you're working with now might end up at a different place than you. Connect with them in LinkedIn, whatever social media you have, and keep those conversations going. So even if you're really tired, go grab that beer with a coworker after work. Really, it's those human interactions that will drive you and pay dividends later on.
Thank you for that. And piggyback with that, because you're just like, go grab a beer with your coworkers, be seen. In your experience, and any of you can talk about this, what have you learned was what would be your number one tip in how to network, what to do? And then also, what would you say would be like, I wish I knew this about networking and this is what I would avoid? So what are some of the do's and don'ts about networking, especially for someone who's coming into this position, coming into this program?
I think I would have really done a little bit more research as far as my dream roles. When I was starting out too, it was just, you can be a registered dietitian at a hospital, a community center, or at food service. Now there's a whole slew of jobs in every sector that you can use these transferable skills to. And it really was just, I would say, reach out to people that have your dream role, right? Like Google it, even if they are CEO at C-level, doesn't matter, and see how they got there. Most people really like to talk about themselves. So more often than not, you'll be able to have like a good chat with someone. And what's the worst that can happen if you message someone on LinkedIn and they say no? Great, you're going to message someone else and ask how they got where they are. And you don't know if that conversation will come up later on. If there is a junior position that opens up in their department, they might think of you again. So little things like that. And then also continuous education. I think another panelist mentioned it. You're not done with once you're done with MPH, right? It's not like you've learned everything you can about public health nutrition and you're done. It's staying active too, reading the research articles, seeing what people are talking about, joining different local groups so that those conversations keep happening. I don't think networking kind of like stops once you've found a job. It really is for the rest of your career. You're going to meet people and grow from it, and vice versa. You're going to be in a position one day where you can have the privilege of dispensing advice. And, that's a great place to be too. I've read a lot about, reverse mentoring. I have mentors in my life, but I also really like reverse mentoring to learn from new graduates that just started or came out of a program, just so that I stay relevant and I understand what the hot topics are and how to really better myself when you learn together. So don't think of it kind of like as a one-way street. The person you're leaning on or asking for help also gets something out of it.
I just want to add to that as well, or mostly echo everything that Lily just said. I 100% agree with like approaching people via LinkedIn, even if you're too shy to approach people at like a networking event in person. LinkedIn is a great place to go. I've reached out to people just for an informational interview, and then not even spoken about a job, but then I have their contact information, and when a job does come up, I can email them about it, and I've gotten interviews that way, even though they don't know. Or just I've reached out to people on LinkedIn and said like made a connection to a role that I was interested in. They just forwarded me straight to their recruiter and got in that way. So it's super valuable. And yeah, definitely when you are reaching out to people on LinkedIn though, like ask about them, frame it in like, we have something in common and I really want to learn about you. But then that can be your foot in the door to, ask for something in return down the road and try to build those relationships. And even if they're not the right person to talk to, they might be able to connect you with someone that's that will help you out.
What would you all say was the best piece of advice you received throughout your journey in public health?
I can start and share a few thoughts and related to the networking question too. I guess I had some thoughts on that, so I can start, and I feel like that will lead into this question as well. When I started out, I felt like networking felt like icky. So my advice is to do it authentically, right? Like be clear about, and intentionally be clear about what you want to do and where you want to go, or at least what feels right for you at the time. And once you start, you'll end up finding people that you feel like you resonate with and are comfortable with, and just start there, right? So do it authentically. And the other thing, and this is related to the piece of advice, is sort of a perspective shift too with networking. I was told once, it's not about who you know, but it's about who knows you. So if you start your career and you're very intentional with what you pursue and you know your reputation, to be frank, and people know your name and you've reached out to them, or you've worked with people and they liked your work and they liked your integrity and your character, that is great, because that's a lot of the time where you can get a job or a recommendation for a job. So the other piece of advice is not directly related to public health, but I heard somewhere that you shouldn't be afraid to ask for what you need, and you'd be surprised at how many people are willing to give you that and more. So once you've started your career and you've started to kind of build things you want to do, look back and recognize your value and the progress that you've made, and then you'll continue to build confidence for getting to the next step. So getting into the job you want, asking for the salary you want, even just getting an interview. So those are a couple different thoughts I have on that, which I hope are helpful.
I also, one of, mostly not related just to public health, but just in general, there is a transition that happens when you get out of a safe, peer, school-driven environment into the real world. There's no counselors, no one's necessarily advocating for your best interest, right? Because everyone's just kind of like knee deep in their own mess as far as trying to get work done, surviving, all of it, especially after COVID and during COVID. You really have to be your own advocate. You're almost branding yourself. And to really echo what Haley says, it's your reputation. It's as you are establishing yourself from role to role, from interaction to interaction, what do you want the person to walk away thinking? They're not going to remember everything you say, right? What are the 3 main points, or even the one thing you want them to remember? Drive that in conversations and see where it gets you. But there's no one advocating for you anymore. Like, unless you speak up, and this is relevant to any job you're going to have some great managers, you're going to have some really terrible ones, but no one's going to know your workload unless you vocalize it and you set boundaries for that.
That's good. Thank you. I'm interested in your experience as grad students. What would you say were some of your challenges, some of the challenges that you faced as a grad student, and how did you overcome those challenges?
I can start us off. It's been a little while, so I'm trying to remember all of the challenges. And there's many. I think just like on top of living in New York City as a student, that is challenging to, try to afford it all and, make your way around, find the right opportunities. But it's also a city of many opportunities. So that is also a huge benefit to take advantage of. I think some challenges are just being like a little bit uncertain that I was, making all of the right decisions about like, is this really what I want to do? Especially I think what was really exciting about being in the CUNY School of Public Health is like, taking classes from other majors and just like learning about environmental health and being like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is so cool. Like should I transition or not? So I think there was just the challenges of balancing like what I was passionate about, what I really wanted to pursue, and just like honing in on that. And so, yeah, I think that just like kind of goes back to like where like my mentality has always been, is just like be curious, try to find out as much as you can about all these things now, because, you can always pivot, but the more you know now is going to help you make a more informed a more informed decision in the long run. So yeah, that's kind of what I remember about like all of the challenges, the multi-level challenges with grad school. It's just like balancing life and work and figuring out really what you want to do in your in the future.
Yeah, going off what Gabrielle said, I think something that I struggled with was figuring out what my path was going to be. And something that I definitely wish that I knew earlier was that public health doesn't just exist in health departments and hospitals, and just really being creative when thinking about your career path and during your job search. Like if you're someone that's interested in tech or finance or health, just really thinking about where these sorts of positions might exist when thinking about your dream job.
Anyone else get issue?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can think of a few things if they're helpful, I don't know. But I mean, to be honest, I remember going through it. I had some differing values from a couple of my professors, and that was really challenging for me. And you know, because I wanted to be in a space where I wanted my professors to make me feel like I could go do anything. And because I wanted to go do anything and like achieve all my dreams, and I just didn't feel that way all the time. So but that's okay. I mean, you know, some people are coming from the perspective of what's realistic, and you want to get a job and you want to be able to work in this type of role. But you know, what I found helped me in that situation was really good, clear communication with the professors, and forming connections with my classmates who I knew had the same values and career trajectories as me. And that was really helpful, because when I felt like I wanted to go achieve this big vision, but the professor wasn't speaking about that type of opportunity in the class, I could connect with my classmates later on, and we would really build each other up and talk about opportunities and stuff like that. And that was networking as well, actually. You know, also separately in general, asking for help, right? From whenever I needed it, whenever I was confused, and going through the capstone process, which was so stressful for me for a while. But just really reaching out and asking for help from professors and staff, because that's what they're there for, and they won't be there when you're done with the degree, right? So use them now, rely on your classmates, rely on the people at the school, and just really be intentional about the process.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat. For those who aren't RDs, did you find it difficult to find a role without being a dietitian, or an MPH nutrition was acceptable outside or clinical roles? Is it difficult to find a role without being a dietitian or an MPH nutrition without?
Yeah, I would say it definitely depends on, you know, what career you're going into. You know, I think the RD is like the gold standard if you're really focusing on nutrition, education, information. And it's always a benefit to have that, but I've never had, or I mean, I've never not been employed. So that is helped. So yeah, it just again, like it depends on what you're going into. If you are, you know, want to work at the health department and work for like the preschool nutrition education, like you have to be an RD to do that. But if you want to work on like the more community-based program delivery, then that's a different story. And again, the health department isn't the only place to work, but those are just like a couple of examples of where it might differ.
I agree too, even though I'm a dietitian, unless the job posting explicitly says RD required, there are a whole multitude of jobs that don't require it, especially in the community space. And even in the, you know, private sector world, like the Compass, Airmarks, Sodexos of the world, don't necessarily require unless you work in a hospital setting.
Do we have any more questions before we wrap up? from the audience or panelists, is there any last bit of advice that you would like to share, or if you wanted to either share like what has been your driving mantra or force to get you where you were, to make your degree work for you? If you wanted to add that before we wrap up.
Not necessarily like mantra, but the way I've always led my career journey is kind of by feel. You know, there are always going to be the dream companies or the dream jobs. And if you get into here, it's going to be great. But during the interview process, when you're talking to people, and a lot of these jobs, once you're past the entry level, there'll be multiple rounds. You'll be able to get a really good feel of how you will fit in and how happy you'll be just talking. I've had interviews in the past where I've had a couple of rounds and I've asked for more interviews and said, hey, can I meet some more people on the team or some interdepartmental people that I would be working on, just to get a good feel of what's going on and really let my gut tell me whether it's the right place. So I would say don't necessarily just look at a title or a company and say, that's the gold standard, that's what I'm supposed to do. Get to know the people. You can start at a lower title or even a different title or even a different company. It really is getting that contrast and comparison, and no one knows yourself better than yourself. So the recruiter's job very often is to get you into that role. They will say things that will make you want to do that. You know, they might not, if it's like really bad hours, they might not tell you that initially. They might just say, you know, you'll be challenged, but kind of read between the lines and really be your best advocate.
That's good. They usually say that interviewing should work two ways. When you're going to interview, you're also interviewing them to see exactly if this is someplace that I would like to work, or these are people I would like to work with. So that's really good. Thank you. Anyone else on the panel?
Yeah, I can add something. So I think when you're looking for roles, like especially talking about just different industries that you might have transferable skills, make sure that you're looking at the company, the organization, their mission and values, and make sure that you really connect with those. That's something that is super important to, you know, address when you're going through the interview process. You know, you can connect your experiences to that and, you know, be really impressive to the interviewers. But it's also really important because it's a good sign that whatever company that is that, like, if they have something that you are passionate about, that you're going to be aligned with them, and that you will kind of you will be able to move forward successfully. And also, I think something that Madison said is just like identifying your transferable skills, especially if you're like looking to pivot. You know, there you don't have to just look at you know, the public sector. You can look at private sector and find something that is values aligned and you know, and also transferable skills. So just like really looking at job descriptions and you know, going through and highlighting what qualities in the job description you fulfill and don't, and you know, going for the ones even if you don't qualify for 100% of them, just identifying those transferable skills and really uplifting those moments in your career.
Thank you. Okay. If we don't have any more questions, we are definitely going to wrap up. But the last question I'm going to ask the panelists is, if you had a friend or someone to come up to you and ask you if they should apply to CUNY SPH, what would you tell them about why should they apply? What would be your points if you had one major point based off of your experience? Why should they apply?
I can start. well, I was, it's accessible. That's the word I wanted to say. It's very accessible. It's cost effective, and it's very, like Lily mentioned earlier, it's very good for preparing you for New York City. And you can take it elsewhere, but if you want to work in New York, it's a great place to go to get those connections and be able to have that New York experience, and just learn about what working in public health in an urban landscape is like. And they're just great people, you know, the professors and people that come in as speakers for events and webinars and things. And, you know, you'll get the fieldwork experience and you can network that way. So there are many reasons to go.
And even after you finish the program, the resources are still available. You have access to the entire CUNY repertoire. I still use PubMed through the library, and I'm like 10 years past. So it's just such a large institution. You're really able to leverage all of their assets, even post-graduation. So really the return on investment is great.
Thank you. Thank you all. So we're going to be wrapping up, and that's just going to be it for us. On behalf of CUNY SPH, we want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, especially our esteemed panelists. Thank you very much for sharing and giving insight and sharing your experiences. If you are a current student that's in the room, don't forget that there are many resources available for you in navigating the public health career. Just reach out to the Office of Career Services and you'll be able to get all the information that you need. For potential students, feel free to contact the Office of Admissions for any other information that you might need. And then the staff will be in the main room for a few minutes if you have any other questions. Thank you very much. And if we're all set, have a great night.
Thank you, James. Great job.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you.